Good afternoon. I'm Rob Grimes, the CEO of the IFBTA, and I want to welcome you to our member webinar series today, which is presented by Hughes. It's always a pleasure to have some of the industry leading suppliers and our industry partners do presentations for us because they're really experts in their field and their areas. The IFBTA webinar series are on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. East Coast. And immediately following this presentation will be posted on the IFBTA website, as well as the websites on social media, and I'm sure Hughes will as well. Before I introduce our speakers from Hughes and our guests today, I did want to just cover one or two housekeeping things with you. The first thing is at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A tab. If you want to ask a question, and there is going to be Q&A, you should go ahead and click on that tab and just submit your questions. Some questions may be answered during the course of the session, and some may wait for the Q&A, but we will try to get to as many as we can. We would ask that you not use the chat box for this because it's better on the Q&A side so that we can go ahead and track it. With that, I would like to introduce Tim Tang, who is the Director of Enterprise Solutions for Hughes, and today's subject is the role of technology in risk management. And coincidentally, by the way, one of our panelists, Zerrick Pearson, who he's going to introduce, is actually one of our chapter chairs from the IFBTA. So Tim, over to you.
Hey Rob, thank you very much. Hello everybody, and welcome to our webinar. I'm pretty excited because this is a topic that has been a kind of a great journey over the past couple of years, and it began with a conversation that Zerrick and I had at Mertech and then at FS Tech, and we've kind of touched this on every time we run into each other at the various events. And so I'm looking forward to this dialogue. There's so much to discuss and so much to share too as well. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. Zerrick, if I could maybe ask you if you could start with introductions, maybe tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how you've come to arrive in your scope of responsibilities.
Sure. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zerrick Pearson. I'm the Vice President of IT for Five Guys Enterprises. We are a 1,500 unit chain across, I think we are in 19 countries thus far. I'm happy with the work with the IFBTA. It's been a great partnership, and folks like Hughes certainly add tremendous value to the organization and to the IFBTA and to our organization as well. With that being said, this subject is near and dear to my heart. I think every IT person loses sleep at night over a host of things, and risk is one of them. I didn't really qualify it as risk. I didn't know what the proper term was until I met Karen, who sort of schooled me on all things risk involving IT. And that's why Karen's on the call. I'm looking forward to speaking on this one today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Karen.
Hi, everyone. Karen Agostinho. I am the Director of Risk Management for Five Guys Enterprise. I've been with the company for 4 years now and have been in the risk management world for 12 years. Time just flies, you know, when you're doing something as exciting as risk management. So.
Well, maybe a good place to start would be, what is risk management? I think, you know, in the IT world, we talk quite a bit about cybersecurity. We talk about PCI. The topic of risk management, particularly in the restaurant industry, doesn't always get a lot of airtime or a lot of discussion. And so I was wondering, maybe a good place to start is if we could just kind of have an overview of the different elements and the aspects of risk management. Zerrick, Karen, would you mind kind of walking us through this?
So Karen, I can, or you can take it if you like. Go for it.
Absolutely. You know, risk management, it requires an oversight and coordination, which includes identification and assessment of high-level risk to determine which to mitigate at an enterprise level. Really, the goal of risk management is to clear the way for the positive impacts or opportunities of an organization activity while minimizing the negative impacts or losses associated with that risk. So really effective processes for understanding and managing risk will ensure that effective, you know, trade-offs are made between the risk and the opportunity. I'm a firm believer in a centralized approach to risk management structures, because the risk management activities truly require an oversight on a high level, including again the identification and assessment of high level risk to determine which to mitigate on an enterprise level. if you want to add on to that.
Sure. So I guess us all being businesses, it comes down to revenue, right? Either protecting revenue or mitigating the loss of revenue at the end of the day. And then compliance, right? The requirements that you have based on where you do business to comply with certain laws. And so again, I had worked in this world. I've been in IT for a very long time. I'd say close to 30 years. I knew the activities we were doing. I knew a little bit about risk, but not really all the aspects of it. Right? Risk can be complex, and risk is something that's tough to convince your C-suite of if they've never had any sort of issue, right? So you're trying to speak to those who aren't IT minded about IT risks, and that can become a very tough sell sometimes.
That's actually kind of one of the questions I wanted to start with, Zerrick, is that when did risk become something of an area of focus for you, or has it always been there? Is this something like the past year or two, or has it kind of always been in the background?
I came from a public company background, so it was there from the beginning. Sarbanes, if you remember the nightmare that was in Sarbanes-Oxley way back in the day, it grew. Risk has always been there. The formal approach to risk management, I think, grew out of the finance world, so the audit world, right? Investors want to know that their revenue is properly protected, and they want to know how you're protecting that revenue before they do business with you. Mm-hmm. So that's where a lot of, I think, the approach to risk came from. And then again, hooking up with folks like Karen, understanding the larger impacts to risk to the business and the concerns around revenue losses, right? Because that's where the C-suite's ears poke up, is when you speak about revenue. So
that's actually kind of a nice lead into our kind of, as we think about risk management, one of the first questions is who needs to be involved? What does the team look like? What do the players, who are the appropriate stakeholders to be involved in managing the risk for a restaurant industry?
So I would say that this is how I thought of risk as well. The one you're not seeing, which is Karen's group, which is risk management, they're actually the ones for Five Guys that tie all of these groups together. They literally dragged all of these bodies, these representative departments, into the room for conversations around larger approach and how we're going to protect the brand. So it's very eye-opening for me. Karen, you want to speak on this one?
Of course. Risk management really is a shared responsibility. So, it's a shared responsibility, and it needs to have clear accountability for everyone involved. Everyone should really have the responsibility for actively participating in the risk management process. So activities that include, risk identification within the areas of personal expertise or responsibility, extended to risk analysis, risk planning, and of risk control tasks. I think one misconception of risk management is more of a crucial problem, whereas it's completely wrong. We really do need to, make sure that the task is done in the beginning, because everything is constantly changing as well. There's constant changes in operations environments that require to be looked at on a regular basis. So it's not just a one-time, okay, we'll do our due diligence, we'll identify and, all of the risk exposure within our industry, and here's our plan B to it. It just doesn't stop there. You have to look at it on a regular basis and make sure that you actually have, do tabletops with certain departments within your organization to make sure everyone is on board and can actually put forth this mitigation strategy plan for the entire company.
I think one of the, and I want to also just express great appreciation for Karen joining us at the last minute. So some of these slides don't necessarily reflect kind of her view of the world. When we talk about digital transformations of a lot of industries, the topic that often comes up is this kind of challenge and conflicts between different working groups, between, like, for example, the marketing group and the IT group, in terms of agendas that are potentially just, directly in conflict in terms of kind of in terms of their objectives and their goals. From a risk management perspective, I would imagine that the problem gets magnified, is it not? Because there's more rules and more things that we're dealing with.
Want to take that one, Karen?
I think it's a shared responsibility, because again, you cannot be an expert on all facets within an organization, and that's why we hire, people such as Zerrick, who heads our IT department, and we closely collaborate also with our legal department, our HR department. We have people in place, for their certain areas of expertise, and we all share and collaborate, what we need to get done to make sure that we protect, the best asset of the company, which is the employees, our customers, and our profitability. So how do we keep the business going? So of course, there's always, a matter of different opinions. But at the end of the day, it's, to funnel and streamline all these thoughts and ideas and to make sure that it is what's best for the company.
And I think that's a very kind of well said. It's being able to understand kind of what is best for the company. Could you speak a little bit to what's at stake here? When we talk about risk management, at the end of the day, ultimately, and we talk about protecting the company, what are we talking about? What is at stake?
I think that one's fairly broad brush. I come down to revenue, right? But there's reputation. Your other side spoke to it, right? You have obligations across the board. Compliance, there could be fines. So the business, there's operational impact, there's reputational impact, there's a revenue impact, there's a morale impact. And folks want to feel comfortable that, and they're giving you information that's well protected. One thing I will touch on, because Karen and I both work for a fairly large organization with a lot of folks, right? A lot of organizations may not have someone in the risk management department or have a department for that at all. So even for some of the smaller businesses, some of these are things you may not have the resources to address now, but they're coming for you whether you know about them or not. And I love to point out the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, right? At some point, they're going to ask you, what data do you have? And that's down to the field level, right? If you have a loyalty program, what fields are you collecting data on in that loyalty program? Where do you have it stored? Who are you sharing it with? And what are the controls around that? So oftentimes organizations will see a nice product, they'll love a product, but never stop to ask how it's working. One example was we looked at a product just for CCTV analysis and customer movement analysis through our organization. And you're capturing video of US citizens, but the data centers for this company were actually outside of the US.
Oh.
Right? Which no one ever thought, and they're used by, I know about 50 brands in the US that use them. But up to that point, no one ever asked where the video files, where the data was being stored and what cross-border protection there was around that, right? But again, having been exposed to Karen and her involving legal in some of those conversations, that was actually top of mind. And one of the first questions that we asked in IT was, where's the data sitting, right?
Yeah.
So it's just some things that folks don't think about, but that through having a team like we have put together that work collaboratively, we learn from each other, and that's something I picked up along the way.
It's interesting that you raised the CCPA, right? The GDPR came up a few years ago, and I was like, well, that's for Europe, and maybe the multinationals will have to deal with that. But then suddenly with the rise of CCPA, now we've got data privacy concerns that are really transforming the internal architectures of how we even handle data in the industry. Can you speak to kind of how CCPA has changed things for you?
Karen, you want to talk to that one first, or want me to?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Follow up with you.
Sure. So us being a global brand, we had GDPR experience going into CCPA. So CCPA is really just the U.S.'s the first state's take on what is GDPR, the Global Data Privacy Regulation, which is the EU standard for customer data and personal data and data privacy, right? What data do you have on me? Where do you have it? I want you to show me every data point you have on me. And by the way, I want to invoke the right to remove. I want you out of every system. I want me out of every system you manage, including your partners, your loyalty partners, your POS partners, you name it. So we had some experience there. The change for us has really been the questions we ask early on and how we qualify partners as we're looking at them, right? Where are you hosted? Where's your data sitting? And who are your partners? Because you're actually liable for data you share with anyone. So if your loyalty program partner had an issue or got compromised with a data breach of some sort, if the customer gave that data to them by virtue of your loyalty program, you're liable for how they handle data. So now you have to dig into how they architect the program, where it's stored, what are their security controls as well. So it's made, it's added a lot of steps to the due diligence process and how we look at partners, but also added sort of ongoing dialogue for as they change their code, as they update how they develop, we need insight into that so we can speak to it as well and get some level of comfort that they're protecting our customer and or employee data.
There's a whole new level of vetting now for your partners, be it loyalty, be it marketing, and the like. Sure. Their problems become your problems.
Karen, you want to add anything there?
No, you hit it right on the head, Z. Again, when GDPR came about and the whole privacy law, it's identifying where are our vulnerabilities, or is it just, are we just talking about first party, the company? I mean, now we have to look at our vendors also, the ones that we partner with, and also their security parameters with respect to this privacy law that's ever evolving. So again, not just looking within the company, we also have to, again, go look at our contracts, the indemnification clauses. I mean, there's so many facets within, contractual agreements as well that could provide some protection for the company. So that's one thing that would be recommended, make sure that legal truly vets and reviews each and every contract that we have with third parties, especially if Zerrick said, if we are sharing information, how much information do they have? Where do they store it? What's their, business contingency plans? Do they have any insurance programs that could potentially respond to a privacy breach? All those details that we would need to be taken into consideration.
It was shocking as Zerrick, it was a couple of years ago when we had one of the early conversations about this idea that a consumer has the right to be forgotten. And it's just astounding just how that simple right can translate into kind of a very meaningful kind of technology challenge with so many data breaches taking place. And particularly in the restaurant industry, because it's so heavily franchised. And, it's one thing for a corporate-owned sites to follow the standards that are driven by corporate. But in a franchise system, how do you make sure that, your operators are not keeping an extra copy of their customers' data so that if they do get breached and the data does get leaked out, that, there's not a problem there?
Part of this is only collecting what you need. If it's there, folks will want it, right? Historically, when someone asked what data, if we did an integration, they asked what data we wanted, we say we want everything, and we'll go through and pick and choose what we want. But now you have to stop and think, do I really need it, and what do I need it for? Like, can you make a reasonable business case for keeping that data? And partner your partners as well, right? Hey, I know you have 30 fields on this form where customers sign up for this product, but can you turn 12 of those off? I only need 8. The rest I don't need. I don't want you collecting that on our behalf as well. So you have to very much deep dive all data you're collecting everywhere, not just yourself, but third parties. Because some states at some point are going to ask you to justify why you're collecting certain things. You have to be able to answer that question and make a business case.
This really is a situation where less is more, and you got to resist the temptation to collect too much stuff. If you don't need it, don't ask for it.
But that flies counter to the evolution of digital engagement, right? Where the more data you have about a person, the better you can engage them, right? And that's where we're all trying to head. And this now flies counter to that thought process.
Absolutely. I was wondering if maybe you could speak to some of the design principles then. If we take a step back here and say, all right, this area of risk management, there's a lot at stake. Heavy fines, as you alluded to, the ability just to even keep doing your business, your reputation with your customers, your ability to operate the restaurant. Can you kind of speak through just some of the basics, the fundamentals, if you will, when it comes to what are the common things in the restaurant industry that we do to kind of minimize our risk profile?
Sure. I'll go fairly detailed and let Karen do it from a high level. But at the end of the day, you want to look at what's monetizable. If someone's going to go through the level of effort to compromise your space outside of the joyride guys, what are they after? What can they get and what can they turn into revenue? That's all they care about. So things like employee data, customer data, or credit card data. Everything else is sort of ancillary to one of those three, right? And so that's where those are what they're looking for. Now you look at all the vectors they can use to get to that. You also look at your landscape, right? If you have 30 places where you're storing data, are all 30 connected, and do they need to be? Again, there was a movement in IT where you networked everything together, right? I think the SaaS, sort of software as a solution service, has kind of sort of changed that thinking. And now I can collect the data from here and send it there, but not have a persistent connection between these two places. That becomes an attack vector, right? So you decentralize as much as you can and only make connections where you need to. And that just minimizes now the places you can look at for where you could be attacked. A lot more is coming through the web, right, overseas or US, and it's interesting, right? Now there are actually documented cases of US hackers and folks trying to steal US data who will perpetrate to be from overseas. So they will use broken English, like it's a second language, things of that nature, to throw folks off the scent and come in, and they can hide, mask where they're coming from and how they're coming in. But at the end of the day, you look at, you know, what are they looking for, right? What is the low-hanging fruit that they're trying to get? And that's where you focus your efforts from a security standpoint, right? Now, from a compliance and operations standpoint, those can be very different. And Karen, you want to speak on that at all?
Yeah, so again, so for Zerrick, you know, your focus again is, you know, IT. So the risk management with, you know, what we do for Five Guys, it's an overhead, higher, a broader perspective as to what risk that we're looking at. So there's legal, there's financial, regulatory, and reputational risk. You know, all those avenues we look at, and again, we try to identify what they are and how. I mean, really, in doing business, risk is a given. It's, you know, there's only so much you can do to actually mitigate or lessen the impact of those identified risks. I mean, especially with COVID. COVID is it's the fluidity of COVID and the impact of, you know, the changing in regulations. It's almost on a hourly, daily, weekly basis, and there's just so much to there's so much information out there, and there's so many developments going on a very regular, fluid basis. Engaging different expertise within the company, you know, from your legal, from your HR. Again, I cannot stress risk management really is a close collaboration with all these department heads, so you can really truly gather all the information that you have that you need. And sometimes, you know, one department, open lines of communication, that's how you can mitigate your risk within the company. Like Zerrick said, you know, talk to your operations, talk to folks who are out in the field and seeing and talking about their practices and their, you know, their challenges, and that really helps to build a business contingency for, you know, the various types of exposures that the company faces.
Karen, I appreciate you bringing up the COVID-19. Can you maybe perhaps just speak to a little bit of what's been happening as it relates to COVID-19 and risk management, how that's affected how we think about risk management in the restaurant industry?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a daunting topic for, you know, a lot of risk management. You know, it opens the case for claims for workers' compensation, for third-party allegations of illnesses. And, you know, it exposes your directors and officers within the organization, and to make sure that you are as a company doing your fiduciary duty to make sure that you are providing a health and safe environment for your employees. And for even employment practices liability exposures, you know, for any discrimination, or, you know, now we have temperature screenings, you know, in some states and other states are not. I mean, the exposure really, it just opened a floodgate of potential, you know, liabilities out there because of COVID. And another big thing is business interruption, you know, under the policies, because most insurance policies do not cover this type of pandemic. There are certain exclusions within the policy that, you know, that eliminates that how you can get, your recoup the revenue lost or whatever loss the company is facing. So it's not like states like California, Illinois, it's not a presumptive law that they have built in with the workers' comp saying that essential workers who have, who make allegations that they did contract the virus within the workplace now compensating, we would cover that. Any for medical or lost time that we had sustained because of COVID.
This is quite a breadth. I mean, you have the challenge of each state coming up with its own regulations and its own approaches. So very similar to kind of as we think about like cybersecurity, for example, in the breach announcement regulations, it varies and it changes. So not only do we have regulations that are just evolving day by day, but then we have regulations that evolve state by state, and you have to kind of keep up somehow with all the different changes simultaneously.
Tim, I'm sorry, go ahead, Karen.
Oh, no, go ahead, Zerrick.
I was going to say, you have on the slide the incident response piece, right? For us, we are all support departments functionally to operation, right? We're a restaurant concept. Operations drives a business. So for us, operations is where all these conversations sort of revolve. Incident response plans, even the tabletops, operations is always involved. At the end of the day, they drive that ship. They're the boots on the ground. They're the guys in every state who kind of have their ears on the ground to know what's happening. To your point, it is tough with the different state regulations coming. We do tap all the different resources, the NRA and others. There's a host of industry resources to kind of keep you updated. But I think Karen mentioned it. We've seen one case where a state changed their guidance twice in a day. So they issued a statement, they issued guidance at 9, it changed at 11, and it was changed again by 4 p.m., right? It's tough. So I'd say find a good resource for information like that. One that keeps itself well updated, and check it often for the states and places where you're relevant. And Karen also mentioned the fact that, there are some things in insurance plans and riders and things that exclude certain things like pandemics, right? So it's all interpretive. I know that's sort of a cop-out answer saying check your state, but honestly, check your state because they are all radically different. And I will say partners matter, right? Make sure your partners are involved as much as possible and make every department part of that partnership. I learned a lot of things in those tabletops because I'm a geek at heart. I approach everything as a geek, right? By having our QC quality controls guys, our risk folks, our ops guys at the table, when we start doing some of these tabletop exercises as far as how we respond to incidents, their insight is actually very helpful. It helps guide, some of what we do and how we do it, and can fundamentally change the approach. So we all are functionally support departments here to operations who drive the ship here as a restaurant concept, and that's where a lot of our guidance comes from.
Oh, it's shocking that CCPA has been implemented when the regulation hasn't actually even been fully formed. I mean, this seems like it's a complete. It's already challenging enough that you've got some very serious requirements, the right to be forgotten, and those kinds of things. But now it's it's not even articulated, and yet they're already seeking to put it into play.
Well, so we've never been in the HIPAA business, right? We've never cared about or documented health. And I know with COVID specifically, folks doing temperature checks or health checks, now that information, if you're collecting anything of a medical nature, now you're in the HIPAA compliance as a concept, which we've never waded into those waters. So where are you storing that? Who can see it? Because it's someone's personal health information. There are strict requirements there. And it's very new for our industry. We've never gotten into things like that. I think it's new for even retail and hotels as well, right? They're going to check someone's temperature to enter someplace. That's one thing. If you're going to document the results of that test, that's HIPAA data. So it's getting very complex.
Well, you all are really bringing up a number of a wide variety of subjects, and we started in general risk, but we ended up in COVID, and clearly COVID itself is creating its own risks and things that we need to deal with. So, we're at the end of our session, but clearly there's a lot more to discuss on this. So, I think you can reach out directly to our panelists for sure. Tim, I really want to thank you for moderating. You took away my job, which is great. And you guys, Karen and Zerrick, did a good job really playing off of each other because your perspectives are different, and yet they all come together. And I think you've tied that together, and you've shown how different departments have to work together as well. With that, I would remind you that this webinar will be posted on the IFBTA website right after this, on social media, on our LinkedIn page, and also through Hughes. I want to thank Hughes again for being our webinar partner for today, and being a great industry partner to the IFBTA, and also Zerrick, for your service in helping us to run the Washington, D.C. chapter. These calls will continue on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock. And I just want to thank everybody for attending today and your support of the industry. And we're all in this together, as they all say, but certainly risk is an area that we needed to focus on a little bit different than what we all think about day in and day out. So thank you very much for attending. And Hughes, once again, thank you very much for presenting this webinar today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.